Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. It's all change in the world of the fertilizers. I've been sitting on this stuff for a while now. Well, it comes out of the box. This is the MSU formula. Came all the way from the US of A via Spain to the UK. So it's been on a better holiday than I've ever had. Anyway, this stuff is purpose designed to work with RO water. So as I say, I haven't tried this yet, and at this time of year it's going to get used in incredibly small doses. It'll just be a token feed rather than using pure water. So well, first job is to retest my RO water and make sure we've got a good starting point. So I haven't done this for a while. Right, what have we got then? TDS reading, that should be 10 or less than. Come on, give it a wiggle. Always need to give it a good shake. Okay, that's coming out at 11. I'm happy with that. That's a nice low TDS reading. Virtually pure water. Now the pH, these meters are not much flipping good, but they give you a rough guide. This should be around the 7 mark. Now this meter usually reads a bit high and then has a habit of settling down after a couple of shakes. So that's coming out at, it was 7.2, now says 7.1, it now says 7. It always does that. I mean, sometimes it starts at 7.6 and then goes 5, 4, 3, but it's around the 7 mark. It's just dropped to 6.9 now. So 6.8 even. Yeah, around the 7 mark. With a meter like that, that's about as close as I'm going to get. Okay, so I'm gonna need 2 hands. Let me just take the lid off. Okay, that's my first look at the stuff. I gave the tub a really good shake, turned it upside down, and did all that sort of stuff. So as far as I'm concerned, whatever is in there is well and truly mixed. Now I can see a slight downside in there. There's different types of particles. Some are a grey colour and some are a white colour. Now obviously to get this to work properly I need a nice even mix of those particles. So I think I'm going to get slightly variable quantities of the various things depending on what those different particles are, but it will average out as I use it. So you know, I might get a little bit high on some sort of things in one mix and then a little bit less perhaps, but it'll average out. And the problem is I'm using low volumes of water. You know, all the instructions are here, are geared up to like a gallon of mixed up fertilizer. Quite honestly, the amount of water that I use doesn't matter that much, but I am now cursing because in my disgust at what the rain mix did to my plants and the response from the manufacturer via long story, old story, but there was a smashing little measuring spoon came with that, and in my disgust with that stuff I threw everything to do with it out, and including the little tiny measuring spoon, which would have been brilliant. So I've now found a little spoon. I think that's supposed to be for tea. Yeah, it says teaspoon. That doesn't mean it's a teaspoon size, it means it's a spoon for tea. See how language can mess you up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a very small amount. One small amount. Now I haven't got a clue, but it says, you know, to get, well, it's easier to show you. Okay, that's what's in it. That's a good mix. I'm happy with that mix. Okay, but down here is a guideline for parts per million of nitrogen. Now obviously that's going to give a higher reading as far as TDS is concerned, because nitrogen is only one part of that stuff that when mixed up will alter a TDS reading. And pH, come to think of it, there's calcium in there. So we'll check them both. I'm going to put a little bit in. Obviously that's got to have time to dissolve, so this is going to be one of these videos done in stages, but I don't like the look of that big lump in there. Oh, it just breaks up, whatever it was. But the fact that it broke up into a powder and has now been mixed in, you know, I'm a trifle worried about the consistency of small amounts coming out of a large tub like this. But all we can do is give it a go. It would be better if it was in powder form, quite honestly, but that's what I've got. So that to me is probably a bit much. Is a tiny little bit. So I'm going to chuck that in, give it a stir. Oh, it's changing colour. We got pretty blue. Now that's going to be copper, probably. Copper sulfate, I think, goes blue in water. Right, I need to make sure that's fully dissolved first of all, so I'll be back in a bit when I've made sure I can see no more particles in the water, and then we'll take a reading again and see what I've got. I'm going to use my TDS meter as the guide. Simple as that, because these quantities are so airy-fairy. I've just got to be based on the TDS reading. And for this time of year, with low growth levels and things, I'm going to go for a TDS reading of somewhere between 150 and 200. That is a very low amount of fertilizer. Okay, so I'll be back when I've dissolved and we'll do another reading. Made good use of the time while I was waiting for that to dissolve. The good news is that dissolves quick, so I'm pleased with that, bearing in mind that water's not that warm. I'm going to keep my RO water in the house, so in theory it's always around room temperature, which is good enough. Not freezing cold out of the tap, that doesn't do your plants any good. There's a little theory for you. Where does rain come from? You know, talking wild orchids, where does it come from? Comes from high up in the sky. Sometimes it's quite low in the sky, but in the main it comes from up there where the plains are. Last I looked out of a plane window, it's pretty damn cold up there, so a lot of that rain that's coming down and watering those wild plants is not probably very warm, but then it probably warms up as it comes down, and then it lands on trees that are warm and this, that and the other, so it probably doesn't arrive at the plants freezing cold, but it does start off pretty damn cold. Anyway, let's do the readings. Let's get this done. Now, I was aiming for about 150 to 200, very low TDS level, nice and low, and I've got hang on, this thing's playing up. I'm just going to change hands. I am right-handed, so let's see what we can get. This meter, last time I used it, was giving funny readings. There we go. I've got 194-ish. Yeah, 192. Yeah, so around the 190 mark, between 190 and 200. Happy with that. That was a good guess, wasn't it? Yay! Let's see what it's done to the pH. In theory, it should have lowered it. But this is new stuff. We've got to try this stuff out. And I like to know what I'm doing before I start. Now, where were we? We were about the 7 mark, weren't we? Give it a good jiggle. Okay, that's gone down to 6.16. Well, I hate to use words like this. Damn near perfect. Whoa! So, first impressions, dissolves quickly. In the low volumes that I use, I will get some variables by picking up different types of particles and powders, but it will balance out over time. So although one mix might be a little bit high in some of the nutrient types, a little bit low on some others, it will balance out with use. I'm not particularly worried about that. It's not an exact science anyway, for goodness sake. Right, now, logic. Why have I suddenly switched to this now when the plan was to start using that at the start of the main growing season, so end of February, beginning of March, when things are starting to really push on? That was my theory. I've changed my mind. I'll show you why, and then try and explain. This little rescue cat, which has got nice little buds, has just opened its first bloom. delicate little beastie, but emphasis on the little. The other buds will open. That little bloom that's just opened, I will give time to open properly, but it is slightly distorted. Yeah? The bit of the plant, excuse my non-technical expressions, that holds the reproductive bits, the bit that hangs out in the centre of the plant over the lip, should be slightly raised and should be in the centre of the lip. Well, even when that lip opens properly, it's not balanced. So I would say there's a little bit of distortion on those blooms. Now I'm going to give you a theory. I've been using an organic fertiliser that is a seaweed-based, mainly kelp-based fertiliser that has all sorts of wonderful things in it if you're growing in soil. I don't grow in soil. I've got a lot of bare roots and I've got a lot of chunky bark type things with an awful lot of air around. Now all the little microorganisms and things that live in soil that make stuff work and allow roots to work properly don't tend to be around for our orchids because of the way we grow them. Now after time in a pot, maybe there are some, and there are some of the colonies. Some nutrients need help to get into a chemical form that the roots can absorb and use, to a lesser extent in orchids, I believe. But anyway, I've been doing a little bit of work on these types of fertilizers, and there are some slightly worrying reports that they have the effect of distorting blooms. Now, okay, for me, this is a first-time bloomer, but it was a rescue cat. Some of the bulbs on it had bloomed before. So this isn't the plant's first time bloom, it's my first time bloom. There is a difference. And if you remember that huge big cattleya that opened a while ago, one of the buds blasted and the other one, quite honestly, lasted about 3 days. Now I know some cattleyas are short-lived, but not that short. So something was wrong. That plant didn't really want to do those blooms properly, and it had been having that type of fertilizer all through the winter, literally from when I dumped the rain mix, which was actually towards the end of last summer, I believe. So it had been having that type of feed as its only form of nutrients, and I'm dubious. I'm not condemning it or anything like that. Some people have had great results, often mixed with other things or alternating with other things, which is often quite a good idea, but I'm probably not going to use it again. And now that I've started using this, I've got no good reason to use it again, because this is the stuff. I've done a lot of work, and this is what I've come up with for me. And it's sat in a really moist environment with the lid off. This is not a good idea, and that will be the last time that fertilizer gets opened in the grow room. There's a reason for that. Those things don't half take in moisture fast, and once you get moisture in there, it starts to coagulate and forms lumps, and then it's not going to work properly. So we won't do that again. That was just for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to get on with me watering, and I'm a little concerned. Let's let the rest of the buds open and give them time to open fully and see what we get. But, you know, that first little bloom is misshapen slightly. Now maybe it'll just push on and the rest of the lip will spread out and it'll look fine. I may be worrying unduly. But we'll see how we go. Just while I'm there, that giant beastie's just opened a bloom. I'll wait till I get a good spike to film it properly. You know, when there's like 4 or 5 blooms open on a single spike, we get a much better impression then, 'cause most of the spikes are still, you know, embryo buds. They're away from blooming yet. And the berryoda is just about to break as well, so we'll have a look at that, even though that plant's not going to be kept. Okay, so I'm going to get on with my watering, and I'll do this bit as a separate vid. Basically, I'm quite happy with what I see with this stuff so far. Dissolves quickly, It has the chemical mix that I want, and it goes with my RO water. And it's quite easy to control. You know, because it dissolves fast, I can put a little bit in the water, give it a good stir around and everything like that. Check the TDS reading. If it's a bit high, add a bit more RO water. If it's a bit low, add a bit more fertilizer until I get a mix I'm happy with to water some plants with. And then obviously, you know, I can mix up more for the next day and this, that and the other. I've got a huge tub that's going to last me a lifetime. Okay, so there we go then. All change on the feed front. A little bit of reasoning as to why, but at the end of the day, really I should have got on and started using this as soon as I got it. But you know, the fact that things don't grow much in the winter, I didn't think they'd need much feed, but then giving them pure water for 3 or 4 months probably wouldn't have done them a lot of good. So that was my choice. I think I will now stick with the MSU formula until such time as I don't like it, which hopefully is never. Or when I run out, then it gets a bit of a problem again, since it comes from the States and you can't get it over here. Okay, that's just a short one on the changes to the feed and the logic. Okay, see you next time. Bye for now.